The Fragile Peace, When Deathworlders Answer the Call. Part 1. The Desperate Alliance. The crystalline spires of Etheria Prime glittered in the light of twin suns, a testament to the artistic and technological brilliance of the Etheri civilization. For 10,000 years, they had known peace, their society built on harmony, cooperation, and the pursuit of knowledge. They had never needed weapons. They had never needed war. Until now. Ambassador Lyra stood before the High Council, her normally luminescent skin dimmed with exhaustion. The holographic display behind her showed the steady advance of the Void Collective fleet, a swarm of obsidian ships cutting through neighboring systems like a plague. "The outer colonies have fallen," she reported, her melodic voice strained. "Millions dead. The refugees speak of total destruction. The Collective leaves nothing behind." High Counselor Theron, eldest of the Etheri leadership, closed his 4 eyes in a gesture of deep sorrow. "How long until they reach our home system?" 28 days, Lyra replied. "Our shields cannot withstand their weapons. They do not respond to communication attempts." The council chamber erupted in fearful whispers. The Etheri had built their civilization on negotiation and mutual benefit. The concept of an enemy that could not be reasoned with was almost incomprehensible. "What of our allies?" asked Counselor Mira. "The Tellurians?" The Jovan consensus. Lyra's thin shoulders slumped. "All have expressed sympathy, but none will provide military aid. Their forces are too small, their tactics insufficient against the Collective." "Then we are lost," Theron whispered. "There is one option," Lyra said hesitantly. All eyes turned to her. "We could request aid from the humans." The reaction was immediate. Half the council rose from their seats in alarm. "The Deathworlders," Counselor Vex hissed. "You would invite predators into our home." Lyra stood firm. "I have studied their diplomatic archives. Yes, they evolved on a world we would consider uninhabitable. Yes, their history is marked by conflict, but they have overcome their violent past. They now protect smaller powers in their region of space." "At what cost?" Mira asked. "Any cost would be better than extinction," Lyra countered. "The humans have defeated aggressors that other species considered unstoppable." Theron's age-lined face reflected deep thought. "Send the call," he finally decided. "If we must choose between oblivion and the Deathworlders, I choose to take the risk." Commander Alexandra Vance stood on the bridge of the UES Relentless, Earth's foremost battle cruiser. At 45, she had seen more combat than most. Her dark hair was cropped short, practical, with streaks of premature gray that she wore as badges of honor. Scars marked her dark brown skin, souvenirs from battles where medical attention had come just a little too late. "Commander," her communications officer called. "We're receiving a priority distress signal from the Etheri Confederation." Vance frowned. "The who?" "Peaceful species from the Cygnus Arm. They've never requested military assistance before." "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing a slender, almost ethereal being with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. 4 arms were clasped in what Vance recognized as a gesture of supplication. "This is Ambassador Lyra of the Etheri Confederation. Our civilization faces extinction at the hands of an entity known as the Void Collective. We have no weapons, no defenses capable of stopping them. We request the aid of humanity." Vance's expression remained impassive, but her mind was already calculating response times, fleet configurations, resource requirements. "Why us?" she asked simply. "There are closer spacefaring civilizations." Lyra's large, multifaceted eyes blinked slowly. "Because you come from a death world. Because your species understands war in ways we cannot. Because we need those who have evolved facing adversity." 6 hours later, Vance stood in the massive briefing room of Earth Fleet Command. The assembled captains and commanders represented humanity's most experienced military leaders. The Aetheri are facing a full-scale invasion from a previously unknown hostile force, Vance announced. They have no military to speak of. Their technology is advanced, but entirely focused on peaceful applications. Admiral Katri, head of Fleet Command, leaned forward. Assessment of the threat. The Void Collective appears to be a highly militarized species with approximately 300 warships. They've already destroyed multiple Aetheri colonies. Intelligence suggests they're resource-driven conquerors. And our response? Asked Captain Rodriguez of the UES Thunder. Admiral Katri's face was grim. Full deployment. The Security Council has authorized immediate military intervention. A murmur swept through the room. Earth rarely committed its entire fleet to a single operation. Why? Asked Captain Wei. The Aetheri aren't part of our defense treaties. Vance pulled up footage from a fallen Aetheri colony. Cities reduced to ash, crystalline structures shattered. Because this is what we built this fleet for, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Admiral Katri nodded. Commander Vance will lead the operation. 75 ships, 14,000 personnel. Departure in 12 hours. As the briefing concluded, Captain Rodriguez approached Vance. 300 enemy vessels against our 75. Those aren't good odds, Alex. Vance smiled thinly. When have humans ever needed good odds, Miguel? We're Deathworlders, remember. Our entire evolution has been beating impossible odds. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Aetheri home system. 75 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls bearing the scars of previous conflicts. At their center, the UES Relentless led the way toward the glittering orbital station that served as the Aetheri's main diplomatic hub. On the bridge, Vance adjusted her uniform as the ship docked. Dr. Patel, you're with me for first contact. Let's try not to terrify our new allies. Dr. Aditi Patel, the fleet's xenoanthropologist, nodded. Their physiological response to stress is different from ours. Move slowly, speak softly, and try not to make any sudden movements. The Aetheri delegation was waiting in the docking bay. Vance had to suppress a gasp at her first in-person sight of them. The Aetheri were tall, nearly 8 feet, with willowy limbs and iridescent skin that pulsed with gentle light. Their forearms moved with a fluid grace that made human movements seem clumsy by comparison. Ambassador Lyra stepped forward. Commander Vance, the Aetheri Confederation welcomes you and thanks you for answering our call. Her voice had a musical quality that seemed to resonate in the air. Vance gave a formal bow, knowing that handshakes might be uncomfortable for the Aetheri. We came as quickly as we could. I understand time is of the essence. Indeed. Please, follow me to the council chamber. As they walked through the station, Vance noted the absence of anything resembling security measures. No checkpoints, no scanners, not even simple door locks. The architecture was stunning. Flowing lines and crystalline surfaces that played with light in complex ways, but completely impractical from a defensive standpoint. The council chamber was a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time view of the surrounding space. The Aetheri High Council waited, their expressions a mixture of hope and trepidation. High Counselor Theron, Lyra announced, "May I present Commander Alexandra Vance of Earth Fleet." Theron inclined his head. "Commander, your arrival brings us hope. But I must ask, can 75 ships truly stand against the Collective's armada?" "That depends," Vance replied carefully. "We need to know everything about your systems, your technology, and the enemy's tactics." "Of course." Theron gestured, and a holographic display activated in the center of the room. "The Void Collective will arrive in 21 days. Their fleet consists of approximately 300 vessels of various sizes." Vance studied the display. "What about their weapons? Their vulnerabilities?" The Aetheri exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We have limited information," Lyra admitted. "Our observation posts were destroyed too quickly to send detailed reports." "What about your defenses?" Vance asked. "How many ships can you commit to the fight?" Another uncomfortable silence. The Aetheri do not build weapons, Theron finally said. Our vessels have shields to protect against space debris and radiation, but nothing that could stop a warship. Vance stared at them in disbelief. No weapons at all. Our species evolved without predators, Lyra explained gently. Violence is foreign to us. We understand it conceptually, but it is not in our nature. Vance took a deep breath, centering herself. How many people are we protecting? Approximately 40 billion across our remaining systems, Theron answered. 40 billion defenseless civilians. Vance felt the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. 75 ships against 300 in unfamiliar territory, protecting a species that couldn't contribute to their own defense. We'll need to convert some of your facilities for military purposes, she said, and we'll need your people to help with non-combat roles, medical support, engineering, logistics. The Aetheri agreed readily, their relief palpable. As the meeting concluded, Lyra approached Vance privately. There is something else you should know, Commander, she said, her voice low. Several members of our council believe this conflict is unnecessary, that we should surrender resources to the collective in exchange for survival. Would that work? Vance asked. Lyra's skin dimmed. No, the collective has never accepted surrender. They take everything, leaving nothing behind. But fear makes some consider desperate options. Vance nodded grimly. Keep an eye on them. The last thing we need is someone trying to negotiate behind our backs. Over the next week, the human fleet transformed the Aetheri system. Civilian stations were retrofitted with shield generators. Sensor arrays were repurposed for tactical coordination. Aetheri ships were modified to serve as medical vessels and supply carriers. In a makeshift command center, Vance reviewed the latest simulations with her tactical team. Every scenario showed the same result: devastating losses. We need a force multiplier, she mused, something to even the odds. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, her tactical officer, pointed to a section of the star map. What about the Cerulean Nebula? It's within our operational range, and the particulate matter could disrupt their sensors. Vance studied the anomaly. Can we navigate it safely? The Aetheri have been studying it for centuries. They have detailed maps. Get me Ambassador Lyra, Vance ordered. When the Aetheri arrived, Vance pointed to the nebula. What can you tell me about this? Lyra's eyes brightened. The Cerulean Nebula. It's a fascinating phenomenon. Dense gas clouds interspersed with pockets of charged particles. Our scientists have mapped its currents extensively. Could we use it to our advantage in battle? Lyra looked startled by the question. I suppose so. The nebula disrupts most scanning technology. It would require navigating by stellar cartography rather than sensors, which your people excel at, Vance noted. Yes, but Lyra paused. Commander, are you suggesting we engage the collective inside the nebula? I'm suggesting we change the playing field, Vance replied. Make them fight where we have the advantage. For the first time, Vance saw something new in the Aetheri's expression, not just hope, but understanding. The beginning of strategic thinking. I will have our cartographers provide everything they have, Lyra said. As she left, Captain Rodriguez entered the command center. The collective has increased speed, he reported. New arrival estimate, 16 days. Vance looked at the tactical display, where the human fleet appeared as a small cluster of blue dots against the vast red swarm of the approaching enemy. Then we better get ready to show them what Deathworlders can do, she said. Deathworlders unleashed. The Void Collective arrived exactly as predicted. 300 warships emerging from hyperspace in tight formation. Their vessels were angular and obsidian, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They moved with mechanical precision, like a single organism rather than a fleet. In the command center of the UES Relentless, Commander Vance watched the tactical display. Her officers stood at their stations, tense but ready. They're scanning the system, reported Lieutenant Kano, her sensors officer. "Probing our defenses. Time to show them what they're dealing with," Vance said. "Execute Phase 1. Throughout the Aetheri system, 20 human warships decloaked, their weapons powered and shields at maximum. They were the bait, a seemingly small defensive force positioned to protect the Aetheri homeworld. On the collective flagship, Supreme Commander Krex observed the human vessels with contempt. His species had evolved in darkness, their 4 eyes adapted to see heat signatures rather than light. To him, the human ships glowed like beacons. "Only 20 ships," he rumbled, his voice deep and resonant in the confined space of the bridge. The Aetheri found poor allies. Sub-Commander Vrex, his second, approached cautiously. "Our intelligence indicated the humans had deployed over 70 vessels. Perhaps they realized the futility of resistance and fled," Krex replied. "It matters not. Proceed as planned." The collective fleet advanced in 3 waves, scout vessels first, followed by destroyers, with the massive dreadnoughts in the rear. Their formation was textbook perfect, designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer numbers. The human ships began to retreat, apparently overwhelmed by the collective's approach. They fired sporadically, their shots barely denting the enemy shields before jumping to hyperspace in seemingly random directions. "They run," Krex noted with satisfaction, "as all prey should. The pattern of their retreat is unusual," Vrex observed. "They are not moving toward the Aetheri homeworld." "Irrelevant. Press the advantage." The collective fleet pursued, breaking formation slightly as they followed the fleeing human vessels. Their sensors tracked the hyperspace signatures, predicting emergence points. Aboard the Relentless, now hidden in the Cerulean Nebula along with the rest of the human fleet, Vance watched the tactical display with intense focus. "They're following the breadcrumbs," she noted. "All ships, prepare for engagement. Aetheri navigators, stand by." Throughout the human fleet, Aetheri specialists sat at navigation consoles. Their natural ability to perceive subtle energy patterns made them uniquely suited to navigate the nebula without sensors. "Collective fleet approaching nebula perimeter," Jackson reported. "First wave entering in 3, 2, 1. The leading edge of the collective fleet entered the swirling blue and purple gases of the nebula. Immediately, their sensors began to fail. Ship-to-ship communications deteriorated. Their perfect formation wavered as each vessel struggled to maintain position. "Now," Vance ordered. The human fleet attacked from within the nebula's depths. Missiles streaked through the gas clouds. Laser fire cut through the particulate matter. The collective ships, blind and disoriented, took devastating hits before they even realized they were under attack. "All ships, target their communication arrays first," Vance commanded. "Then propulsion systems. I want them isolated and immobilized." The battle unfolded like a deadly dance. Human ships, guided by Aetheri navigators, moved effortlessly through the nebula while the collective vessels floundered. For every human ship that took damage, 5 collective vessels were disabled or destroyed. On his flagship, now entering the nebula, Krex raged as reports of losses flooded in. "A trap," he snarled. "They led us here deliberately." "We should withdraw," Vrex suggested. "Regroup outside the nebula where our sensors function properly." "No." Krex slammed his fist down. "I will not be outsmarted by prey. All ships, continue advance. Find the human vessels and destroy them." The collective pressed deeper into the nebula, abandoning formation in favor of a scattered search pattern. It was exactly what Vance had anticipated. "They're dividing their forces," she noted. "Phase 3. Target their isolated ships." In small strike teams, human vessels ambushed the separated collective ships. The battles were brief and one-sided. Without their numerical advantage and coordinated tactics, the collective vessels fell one by one. But the advantage couldn't last forever. As the battle raged into its 6th hour, the collective began to adapt. Their ships clustered into defensive groups. They fired indiscriminately into the nebula, occasionally scoring hits through sheer volume of fire. "We're taking losses," Rodriguez reported from the Thunder. The Intrepid and Valiant are down. The Dauntless is critically damaged. Vance studied the tactical situation. They had destroyed or disabled nearly 100 collective vessels, but more than 200 remained. The human fleet was down to 63 operational ships, many of them damaged. We need to end this, she decided. Prepare for Phase 4. Phase 4 was the riskiest part of the plan. A direct assault on the collective flagship. If they could capture or kill Krex, the highly centralized collective fleet might be thrown into disarray. Aetheri navigators, Vance addressed the slender aliens at their stations. Can you get us to the collective flagship? The lead navigator, an Aetheri named Selene, nodded. We have been tracking its energy signature. It is at the heart of the nebula now. Then that's where we're going. Captain Rodriguez, assemble the strike team. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, you have the bridge. Rodriguez looked alarmed. You're leading the boarding party personally. Sometimes you have to remind the universe why humans are classified as Deathworlders, Vance replied, checking her sidearm. Besides, I need someone I trust on the Thunder in case this goes sideways. 20 minutes later, Vance led a team of 30 elite Marines aboard 3 stealth shuttles. They launched from the Relentless, immediately disappearing into the nebula's swirling gases. Stay close to my signal. Selene's voice came through the comms. The currents are treacherous here. The shuttles weaved through the nebula, occasionally glimpsing the flashes of distant battles. Suddenly, the massive form of the collective flagship appeared before them, a behemoth, twice the size of the Relentless. There's our target, Vance said. Approach pattern Delta. Aim for the secondary docking bay. The shuttles adjusted course, using the ongoing battle as cover. As they neared the flagship, Vance noticed something strange. Those aren't standard docking bays, she observed. They're weapon ports. As if in response to her observation, the ports began to glow with energy. Evasive maneuvers, Vance shouted. The shuttles scattered as massive energy beams cut through the nebula where they had been moments before. 2 made it past the barrage, but the third took a direct hit and vanished in a ball of fire. They were ready for us, Specialist Chen said grimly. Vance gritted her teeth. New plan. Full speed, crash trajectory. We're going through their hull. The pilot looked at her in shock. Commander, the shuttles aren't designed to. They'll hold together long enough. Do it. The 2 remaining shuttles accelerated to maximum speed, aiming directly for the flagship's seemingly vulnerable midaction. At the last moment, Vance activated the emergency shields, concentrating all power forward. The impact was tremendous. Metal screamed against metal as the shuttles tore through the collective ship's outer hull. Warning sirens blared as the shuttle systems failed one by one. When they finally ground to a halt, they were inside a vast, darkened chamber. Everyone still breathing? Vance asked, unbuckling from her crash harness. The Marines responded with grim acknowledgments as they gathered weapons and equipment. Shipwide scans show we're 3 decks below the bridge, Chen reported, checking his tactical display. But the life support is minimal in this section. The collective evolved in low-oxygen environments, Vance recalled from the briefings. Brothers on, everyone. Let's move. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Collective soldiers in heavy armor wielding energy weapons. The confined spaces of the ship's corridors made for brutal, close-quarters combat. The humans fought with a ferocity that seemed to surprise the collective troops. Where the aliens relied on overwhelming numbers, the humans used tactics honed through centuries of warfare. They leapfrogged positions, created improvised explosives from their equipment, and used the ship's own architecture against its defenders. They're not used to fighting inside their own vessels, Vance realized as they pushed forward. They never expected an enemy to get this far. After 20 minutes of intense fighting, they reached the central lift that would take them to the bridge. Chen placed breaching charges on the doors while the rest of the team provided cover fire. Ready when you are, Commander, he reported. Vance nodded. Do it. The charges detonated, ripping the doors apart. The team surged forward into the lift, securing it quickly. "Bridge level, now," Vance ordered. As the lift descended, she opened a secure channel to the Relentless. "Jackson, status report." "The fleet is holding." "But barely," came the strained reply. "We've lost 14 more ships. The collective is starting to break through our defensive lines. We're almost at the bridge. Be ready to exploit any advantage." The lift stopped, and Vance raised her hand. "Stack up. Dynamic entry on my mark." The Marines positioned themselves at the doors, explosives ready. 3, 2, 1, mark. The doors blew inward, and the humans charged onto the bridge of the collective flagship. They were met with immediate resistance, a dozen collective officers firing from defensive positions. The battle was brief but intense. When it ended, only Vance and 7 Marines remained standing. Before them, Supreme Commander Krex rose from his command chair, a massive figure nearly 8 feet tall with 4 glowing eyes and chitinous armor covering his torso. "So," he rumbled, "the prey comes to the predator." Vance stepped forward, her weapon trained on him. "Surrender your fleet or die here." Krex laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "You humans are fascinating. So fragile, yet so determined. Do you truly believe you can defeat the collective?" "We already have," Vance replied. "Your ships are being picked apart in the nebula. Your perfect formation is shattered. All that's left is to decide how many more of your people die today." "A clever trap," Krex acknowledged, "but ultimately futile. Even if you destroy half my fleet, the remainder will still overwhelm the Ethery. You've only delayed the inevitable." "Have we?" Vance allowed herself a small smile. "Look outside." Krex turned to the view screen, which showed the nebula beyond the ship. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but then a pattern emerged in the gas clouds. They were moving against the natural currents, swirling in unnatural formations. "What is this?" he demanded. "The Aetheri aren't as helpless as you thought," Vance explained. "They can't build weapons, but they understand energy better than any species I've encountered. They've been manipulating the nebula itself, creating energy pockets that are disabling your ships one by one." Outside, brilliant flashes of blue and purple energy erupted throughout the nebula as the charged particles ignited. Collective ships caught in the discharges went dark, their systems overloaded. "Impossible," Krex whispered. "That's the thing about Deathworlders," Vance said. "We specialize in the impossible. Now about that surrender." 3 weeks later, Commander Vance stood in the Aetheri High Council chamber. The mood was significantly different from her first visit, no longer fearful, but cautiously optimistic. "The last of the collective fleet has retreated beyond the Galactic arm," she reported. "We've established sensor nets to provide early warning should they return." High Counselor Theron bowed deeply. "Commander, the Aetheri people owe you and humanity a debt we can never repay. You saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization." Vance nodded in acknowledgement. "The victory wasn't just ours. Your people proved remarkably adaptable in crisis. Perhaps that is the lesson we needed to learn," Lyra said thoughtfully. "We believed our peaceful nature made us vulnerable, but in truth, it gave us a different kind of strength. We manipulated energy within the nebula in ways your weapons never could." "Different strengths for different challenges," Vance agreed. "That's why the galaxy needs both our peoples." "And what of the collective?" Counselor Mira asked. "Will they return?" "Eventually, probably," Vance admitted. "But not soon, and not without serious consideration. We've established a permanent defense outpost in your system. A reminder that the Aetheri are under Earth's protection now." As the meeting concluded, Lyra accompanied Vance back to the docking bay where a shuttle waited to return her to the Relentless. "Many of my people feared you when you arrived," Lyra admitted. "The concept of Deathworlders carried such negative connotations. Predators, warriors, beings shaped by violence." "Not entirely untrue," Vance pointed out. "No, but incomplete," Lyra said. What we fail to understand is that the same evolutionary pressures that made humans formidable in battle also instilled in you a powerful drive to protect others. The very traits we feared were what saved us. Vance considered this as they reached the shuttle. Perhaps that's the greatest strength of Deathworlders. Not that we're good at fighting, but that we choose who and what we fight for. She extended her hand, and after only a moment's hesitation, Lyra took it in her own slender fingers. "Two unexpected alliances," Vance said. "And the strength they bring," Lyra finished. As the shuttle departed, Vance watched the Aetheri homeworld grow smaller in the viewport. The human fleet had suffered losses, 23 ships and over 1,000 personnel. But they had saved 40 billion lives and forged a new understanding between very different species. Sometimes that was worth the price that Deathworlders paid.